All right, let's keep the conversation going, guys. So, this is something that I am actually personally curious about. The word mate, bloke. I hope I'm saying that right. I might not even be saying that right. And here, maybe in the United States, it might be like man or dude. But how frequently is the word mate used in Australia and the UK? And I also want to know how the word bloke is actually used. So this one, I'll start with Philip. Can you give me your thoughts, feedbacks on these words here?
I think mate every day.
Every
I
day.
don't think a day doesn't go by where I don't use it or I don't hear it, at least in public somewhere. Um, I think there's two ways. There's a few ways you can use it. There's two main ways you can use it. Obviously, in a positive way. So you use it as a substitute for like what are you, as an addition to you. So what are you doing, mate?
Mhm.
Or how's it going, mate? Like
Mhm.
that. But the way that we say it depends on whether or not it's a good reason or a bad reason we're using it.
Mm.
So, for example, if it's with friends, we might be like, "Hey, mate, how's it going?" So, mate, it's kind of a positive intonation. But if it's kind of negative, judgmental, we're like, "Mate, what are you doing, mate? Come on," right? That's how we'd probably use it. But yeah, definitely male, female doesn't matter.
Mm.
Anyway, we use it for sure.
Interesting. So it doesn't matter if you're referring to a guy or a girl, everybody is a mate in Australia.
Everybody's a mate, right?
And it doesn't matter if you are friends or you just met them for the first time, you'll still refer to them as mates.
Yep, yep. So you'll hear it on the bus. People get on the bus and go, "Hey mate, how's it going?" And then when they get off the bus, they go, "Cheers, mate," and then they'll just jump off the bus like that.
That's amazing. I love
So
that. How about you, Lewis?
Well, this is actually really interesting because so I'm from the south of England, just outside London. And before I came to Japan, I moved further up north to Manchester, which is middle of Britain, but further up north. Now, I didn't think about this at all. I didn't think anything of this, but apparently I say mate a lot. And I feel like that's kind of normal for where I grew up. But when I moved up to Manchester, people would say to me, they'd say, "Oh, where are you from in Australia?" They don't ask me, "Are you Australian?" No, no, they say, "Where are you from in Australia?"
Oh.
Because I would just be like, "Oh, thanks, mate," or like, "Oh, you're right, mate." So I would say mate, and I don't think I have an Australian accent, but I would say that quite commonly. And I guess in the south of England, maybe it's a bit more common, but up in the north, not at all. So people mistook me for being Australian.
Mm,
Mm.
wow. That's interesting. And the way
Mm.
you use it, is it pretty identical to the way Philip uses it in Australia? Pretty much anybody, any gender, sex, whether you meet them for the first time or they've been your close buddies, you'll refer to everybody and anybody as mate.
Yeah, absolutely anybody. I think definitely in Australia, I think they definitely use it more. Um, but yes, I would use it for
Hmm.
anyone. Yeah. And you also mentioned about bloke as well. Yeah, bloke, I feel like bloke has such a there's a real like nuance to it. It has a kind of weight. Um, like a bloke is like a real kind of like a man, like
Okay.
a guy, like I don't know, just like if you just picture a kind of a man drinking beer, working on a construction site, it's a bloke. You know, it's a guy, a bloke. Like, it's so difficult to like it's so difficult to define, but there's a real the nuance to it. It has a lot of weight.
So you wouldn't use bloke towards a female, is what you're saying?
No, no. Bloke, mate, yeah, mate is friend, pal, and but bloke is definitely a man, a
Yeah.
bloke.
And is
Mm.
that like a word that you use more with like friends, like informally, or is it kind of depending on where you're from in England? Is it like your background? Like how is that word typically used?
Well, I feel like like before, like mate or man, you can just put on the end of a sentence like "You're right, mate," or "What's up, man." Like it's you just as I said, we put it on the end of a sentence. But bloke is more like used as a noun, like oh, some bloke came in earlier, and oh, I was talking to this bloke earlier, and he said blah blah blah.
Mm,
So I'd actually use it to identify someone,
gotcha.
not just on the end of a sentence.
Makes
Mm.
sense. How about you, Philip? What's it like over there?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. We use bloke for like referring to a third person.
Mm,
Um, whether it's formal, informal, whether it's someone you know or you don't know. Like let's say if we're talking about, I know Hugh Jackman, would be like, oh yeah, he's a good bloke.
mm,
Or if we're
mm.
talking about the Prime Minister, oh yeah, he's been a pretty good bloke lately. So pretty much a substitute for guy, I
Mm.
think.
Mm.
But much like Lewis said, yeah, mostly for kind of those manly men, kind of as he said, construction worker, beer drinking, that kind of image at the first. But then we use it in other ways as well, mostly to refer to a third person.
Gotcha. So a little like rough around the edges and maybe got like the beard going and yeah, like the really rough looking manly man kind of person is the person you imagine, huh? Yeah. So with bloke, you wouldn't say like, hey bloke. It's more like used as like I spoke or there was a bloke at the grocery store or something like that, referring to like a guy.
Yeah, yeah. And usually really for like storytelling.
Mm,
So be like, oh, I saw this bloke yesterday.
mm.
And then
Oh,
you'd start
gotcha.
talking about it like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so in, the United States, I think a lot of it depends on where you live and where you grew up. So I think the most common word is man, which is probably the closest to the word mate. But the only thing with man is that it really has more of a speaking to another man in terms of like male. So you wouldn't really say, hey man, to like a female. You totally could. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think like growing up, I would say like, hey man, to a guy, but I think I would probably watch what I say. I wouldn't like go up to a female friend and be like, hey man, how are you? Kind of thing. I'll just completely take that out of the sentence. And man is used, it seems like in the exact same way as mate that you guys were talking about. Dude, I'm sure you guys have heard of that one before. Typical like surfer, snowboarder, skater type of language. I went to college in UC Santa Barbara, which is a school located right along the beach. And it was pretty crazy because I went from never hearing dude in my high school to all of a sudden about 90% of my friends were like, hey, dude, what's going on? Just like the typical movie scenes that you see. So the word man got replaced with dude. And within a year, I started using the word dude in like every other sentence that I was saying. So dude is also another word that is used instead of man. Maybe one last one. Bro. I don't know if you guys use that one a lot, but we hear that word a lot. And I find myself using that quite frequently with my close friends. Not really with people that I don't know, but if I haven't seen my friends in a while, I'm like, hey, bro, what's going on? And even with strangers, it's a word that you can casually use. But again, it's really directed towards males and not females. Bro, Lewis, Philip, you guys use that word at all?
How about you, Philip?
No, no,
No.
it's got that American vibe on
It's
it,
got that American
definitely.
vibe to it. Yeah.
It
I
Yeah.
does.
I feel like I actually say brother a
Mm,
lot, fully. Bro, yeah, maybe sometimes in the past, maybe, but brother, I definitely use a lot. When I want to, I don't know, show some endearment towards someone. Um, all men are brothers. We're all part of the same human family. So yeah, to say brother to someone at the end of a sentence, like, oh, thanks, brother. Like, I
mm.
think that shows that has a real weight of respect to it.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think bro is kind of the same way. It's kind of like a part of your family. So you might use it with friends like, thanks, bro. Or if you need any help, bro, I'm always here for you. But the funny thing is kind of like what Philip mentioned with mate, if someone like bumped into you and you're maybe irritated that day, you might say, bro, watch out. And you might use it like that to show that you're not very happy with that person. So yeah, pretty interesting. Very cool.